Om Sadashivasamārambhām Shankaraचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sah Veeryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
That's it.
Om Tat Sat. Tanmay, would you please lead?
Om Acharaya. From
1
9th
to 12th, yeah.
Vijnanasarathiryastu
Vijnanasariyarthyastu
Manaf pragrahavan naraha
Manaf pragrahavan naraha
Sodhvanaf paramapnoti
Sodhvanaf paramapnoti
Tadvishnof paramam padam
Tadvishnof paramam padam
Indriyebhyaf parahyarthaha
Indriyebhyah paraharthaha
Arthebhyascha param manaha
Arthebhyascha param manaha
Manasastu para buddhihi
Manasastu para buddhihi
Buddheratma mahan paraha
Buddheratma paraha
Mahataf param avyaktam
Mahataf param avyaktam
Avyaktat purushaf paraha
Avyaktat purusha
Purushanna parankinchit
Purushana param kinchit
Sakashtha sa paragatihi
Sakashtha sa paragatihi
Esha sarveshu bhuteshu
Esha sarveshu bhuteshu
Gudhotmana prakashate
Gurotmana prakashate
Drishyate tvagrayaya buddhya
Drishyate tavrayaya buddhaya
Sukshmaya sukshmadarshibihi
Sukshmaya sukshmadarshibihi.
Acharya, you're muted. We can't hear you.
All right, thank you, Tanmay. So the word here is buddhya, not buddhaya. It is a half the. So just be careful in the pronunciations. Okay, now we look at the ninth mantra. So you have to say, you have to break it up. So Vijnana Sarithir Yastu. So that becomes Yaha tu Vijnana Saratihi. Yaha tu Vijnana Saratihi. Manaha Pragrahavan Naraha. Therefore, you can rearrange it. Yaha Naraha, that person. Vijnanavan Sarathi, whose intellect is like the driver, like the charioteer. It's a discriminative intellect. And not only that, Manaha Pragrahavan. His mind are like the reins. So the intellect is the charioteer and the mind is the reins. And of course, the sense organs are the horses. With all these in place, what happens? Param Advanaha. The destination of the journey, which is what? Tat Paramam Padam. That supreme nature, Vishnoho, of Brahman. So this Vijnanavan Sarathi, the man with the discriminative intellect, and how do I make sure that the intellect is disciplined and that it is taking the best decisions? So we have to here bring in all the teaching that ultimately the intellect is anatma, and I cannot, however refined my intellect is, I cannot depend upon the intellect alone, because the intellect can be confused, can be deluded, and therefore use the method used by Arjuna. So depend on the Shastram, appoint the scriptures as your guru, as your driver, and therefore Manaha Pragrahavan, the mind is in control, and Sahanaraha, that person, Param, he crosses the ocean of samsara, he reaches the Advara Param, the end, the end of the path, the destination of the spiritual path. And Shankaracharya takes this word Advanaha and comments on it as Samsara Gatehe. So travels through samsara, samsara gatehe, that person, he travels through samsara to where? Param, which is the final destination, which is what? Vishnoho Padam. The literally meaning the feet of Vishnu. Here, of course, Vishnu is Brahman, and we have to understand all this very carefully. There is really no travel. It is simply understanding that I am Brahman. So every time we read these words, we have to mentally replace the reaching with understanding. So there is no reaching over here. Apnoti. There is no reaching over here. Reaching means understanding. And Shankaracharya interestingly translates apnoti as muchyate sarva samsara bandhanaihi. It is a very interesting translation, because muchyate sarva samsara bandhanaihi literally means the chains of samsara, they release him. It is not that he is released from the bonds of samsara. The bonds of samsara release him. And in this connection, we can remember Urvaru Kamiva Bandhana. Just as the pumpkin is released by the creepers, this person is released by the bonds of samsara. He is no longer subject to samsara. And Vishnu here is not a personal God, it's not a Ishtadevata. Vishnu, the derivation is Sarvam Vyapnoti iti Vishnu, that which envelops everything, that which pervades everything. Or Sarvam Viveshti. Viveshti is to support. Sarvam Viveshti iti Vishnu, that which is the support of all. And therefore one does not need to undergo any travel to reach Nirguna Brahman, because that Nirguna Brahman is everywhere. Okay. Then we look at mantra number 10. It's a very interesting mantra. Indriyebhyah parahyartha arthebhyascha param manaha manasastu para buddhihi buddhir atma mahan paraha. Does it remind you of anything? Any other verse which you have studied, chanted somewhere?
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. What is the verse?
I don't remember the verse, Acharya. It says the mind is superior to body.
Yes.
The senses are superior to mind.
Okay.
Sorry, intellect is superior to mind.
Yeah.
And that supreme Atma is superior to
Fair enough.
intellect.
So the verse is Indriyani parani yahuhu Indriyabhyah param manaha manasastu para buddhihi buddhe parasastu saha. That is the 42nd verse of the third mantra of the third chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. That verse is based upon this. Again, whenever we read Upanishad verse, Upanishad mantra, then you have to connect automatically. This Upanishad mantra is the original, and the Bhagavad Gita mantra is the extract. Okay. So this is, again, whenever you study this, you connect automatically to there. This is the original mantra from the Upanishads, and the mantra from the Bhagavad Gita is just extraction from there. Krishna has reminded us of this teaching. Okay. Now look at the individual words here. Okay. First, look at the individual words of the Bhagavad Gita mantra. Indriyani parani yahu. The indriyas are superior to the sense organs. Indriyabhyah param manaha. The mind is superior to the indriyas. Manasastu para buddhihi. The intellect is superior to the manaha. Buddhehe parasastu saha. The atma is superior to the buddhi also. That is the translation there. Now look here. Indriyabhyah parahi arthaha. So arthaha means sense objects, vishayas. So arthaha parahi indriyabhyah. Sense objects are indeed arthahi para indriyabhyah, are superior to the sense organs. Manaha param artebhyacha. Mind is superior to the sense objects. Buddhihi tu para manasaha. The buddhi, the intellect, is superior to the mind. Mahan atma paraha buddhehe. The mahat is the samashti karana shariram, maya, that is superior to the mind. This is the translation here. Okay. Compare these two verses. Are you confused? You should be confused. If you are not confused, it means I am so good at confusing you that you have not realized you are confused. Anybody? Why are you confused?
He's saying that the sense objects are indeed superior to the sense organs. Should be the opposite.
It should be the other way around. Very good. So how is that? How is it that Bhagavad Gita says, Indriyani pararyahu, that the sense organs are superior to the sense objects, the body? And how is it that the original says that sense objects are superior to sense organs? So that being so, it needs explanation. Krishna doesn't explain. So Shankara gives his explanation. Shankara says that, I will give the brief gist of the Shankara Bhashyam on this verse, on this mantra. So Shankara says that we think that when we see object, we are seeing the object. And I said in the last class or the class before that actually the eyes, the sense organs, they do not perceive the object at all. They only perceive the 5 gunas. And those 5 gunas put together, when the mind examines it, it calls it an object. And therefore we think that the gunas can be the sabda, sparsha, color, form, touch, smell, all those things, the gunas, okay? So we think that those gunas belong to the objects themselves. But Shankara says here that in terms of Vedanta, the gunas belong where? If you remember Tattva Bodha, where do the gunas belong?
Maya.
Maya.
Pancha,
Not Maya.
Panchatattva.
Why?
Panchatattva.
Yes, but can you expand on that?
So, Akasha, the sound.
Akasha, what is the guna? The shabda is the sound.
Sound.
Right.
Shabd.
Now this guna is which Akasha? Is Sukshma Akasha or Sthula Akasha?
Sukshma.
Right. So Vedanta says the gunas don't belong to the object at all.
Sukshma.
The gunas belong to the subtle 5 elements. There is another name for subtle 5 elements, the tanmatras. Tanmatra literally means tat matram, only that, only the pure form. So the Vedanta says, Shankara says, the gunas belong to the tanmatras, and it is the guna of the tanmatra that you are experiencing in the sthula pancha mahabhutani. The gunas of the Sukshma Panchabhutani are being experienced in the Sthula Panchabhutani. For example, sound, as you said, Shabda is the guna of the Akasha, guna of the Tanmatra Akasha. It is after Panchikaranam, when you hear the sound with your actual ears, when you hear the sound, that sound is the expression of Sukshma Akasha Shabda in the Sthula Akasha. Remember, Sthula Akasha is after Panchikaranam. And whatever the ears hear, whatever your five sense organs hear, are not the gunas directly of the subtle body, subtle Panchamahabhutas, but they are the gunas of the subtle Panchamahabhutas being expressed in the grossified post Panchikaranam Sthula Panchamahabhutas. Okay, that's a very important point which you should note. So you never perceive any substance at all. Your sense organs, they never grasp any substance, any vastu at all, any object at all, but they only grasp the properties of that object. That is the first thing which one should understand. Therefore, by that logic, I am grasping only what? Only the gunas of that object. I am not grasping the object at all. And therefore, the object of the senses is not the object. For example, the rose is not the object of my eyes. The object of my eyes, two are there, the form and the color of the rose. So the gunas of the rose, which is the form and the red color, that alone my sense organs are able to grasp. Is that clear so far? And therefore, deriving from there, all arthas, all vishayas, all sense objects are essentially the subtle Panchamahabhutani manifesting as the gunas in the Pancha Sthula Mahabhutani. And therefore, whenever your sense organs are experiencing any object, remember that the sense objects are experiencing not the Sthula object, but they are experiencing the Sukshma Pancha Mahabhutani alone. It's a bit of an involved explanation, so I would like you to be sure that you understood. Your sense objects are experiencing not the gross physical objects at all, but the Sukshma, subtle Panchamahabhutas, which have gone towards forming that physical object after Panchikaranam, of course. Is that clear?
Acharya, a very involved, complicated way of saying that nothing is actually real.
Okay, so now having understood this, what are these Vishayas?
Can I ask something?
Yes, please go ahead.
So can we say when what we see is the name and form or color and form?
Correct.
So we will say what we are experiencing is a vritti, not exactly the
No,
object.
Vritti is fine. I mean, every experience is in terms of Vritti. So don't get confused there. But the experience of the Vritti is not, the point being made is, you are not experiencing something called a Sthula object. A Sthula rose is not there at all. You are experiencing the gunas of the Sukshma Panchabhutani constituting that rose. So you are experiencing the gunas alone. And ultimately you are experiencing only Sukshma Panchabhutani. You are not experiencing Sthula Panchabhutani at all because it is simply not there.
Ravi, can I make
Yes,
I find this a little confusing because, I mean, physiologically, we have physical sense organs and yes, they are being stimulated in a physical manner.
correct.
This this information is being converted into electrical form into the brain.
Yes.
From
Matraji? I think he got disconnected. Matraji, you are muted, can't hear you.
conversion, but you can't deny that there was a physical stimulus in the beginning.
There is a physical stimulus without any doubt. But if you, the idea is that you examine. For example, let us say we are looking at gold necklace. We
Yes.
examine the gold necklace and we say it is not anything but gold.
Yes.
Then we examine the gold further and we say there is only atoms in it. Then we examine the atoms further and then we say there are molecules in it. And then we say there are only subatomic particles in it. And then we say there are only waves in it. So in the ultimate analysis, there is really nothing. The object which I see, it doesn't really exist. It's all mithya. It's all dependent on something else. That is the point being made. So what is being made? Point being made here is that every thula object, every gross object is ultimately dependent upon the sukshma object alone, on subtle object alone, because it is the gunas which belong to the subtle Pancha Mahabhutani that you are experiencing.
Yeah.
So that is the point
question
being made.
Okay.
Involved point.
Are those tanmatras in the object, or is it a creation of the mind? I mean,
Tanmatras are the name given to Sukshma Pancha Mahabhutani.
Yeah. So are we saying that what we're experiencing is actually what we have created in our mind, the tanmatra in the form, in the thought of a form, in the form of a thought.
Ultimately, that is everything. The whole world is in the form of the thoughts only. That is
Exactly.
another discussion altogether.
This is not the point here.
This is not the point here. Here the point is that your sense organs are not really experiencing any gunas of any sthula Pancha Mahabhutani. They are experiencing the gunas of the Sukshma Pancha Bhutani. And therefore, when I say sense object, arthaha, I am actually meaning Sukshma Bhutani itself.
Okay.
Now, the reason why this is said is that since the Vishayas, since the objects are basically Sukshma Pancha Mahabhutani, which is the cause and which is the effect, it is the Sukshma Pancha Bhutani which have created the Sthula Pancha Bhutani through a process of Panchikarana. And therefore, the subtle elements are said to be the cause of the creation of the gross elements. Now, why this is being said so importantly is because in Tattva Bodha, we say that the Indriyas are created from the subtle five elements. Right? From the Rajasic aspect, the Karma Indriyas are created. From the Sattvic aspect of the five elements, of subtle five elements, Jnanendriyas are created. And therefore, the subtle five elements are the cause of the Indriyas themselves. Right? Therefore, the subtle five elements, which is basically the object, the subtle five elements are the cause of the Indriyas. That is what Shankara is driving at. That is important to understand. It is the Indriyas are the product of the subtle five elements. And also, in the earlier discussion, we said that the subtle five elements are nothing but the sense objects. And therefore, the sense objects are the cause and the Indriyas are the product. Therefore, this particular interpretation that sense organs are superior, sense objects are superior to the sense organs. Very, very involved.
Sorry, I don't think I understand the last portion. So essentially what is being said is that the Indriyas are finally also an object. Is that what is being said?
What is being said is that any experience of any sense object that you have, you are actually experiencing the gunas of the subtle Panchabhutani alone, which means any sense object you experience is an experience of subtle five elements. Okay, that is you have to remember that any sense object that you experience is the experience of subtle five elements. That is the first thing. And second thing is that subtle five elements themselves are the creator, are the cause of the indriyas. You put both these together, and which is the karanam, which is the cause? The subtle five elements are the cause, which means the sense objects in the subtle form are the cause, and the indriyas are the created.
Sir. In other words, without sense objects, these sense organs don't exist.
Without this, see, it's a very involved explanation. It's not as straightforward as
The
saying.
subtle object,
Subtle
basically without the
Subtle aspect of
tanmatras.
that Panchamahabhutas.
Subtle tanmatras. That's why I said tanmatras. Tanmatras are the karanam, and indriyas are the karyam. And therefore, he says that the sense objects are superior to the sense organs. Indriyavya param hi arthaha.
Oh,
Sense
Acharya.
object becomes the cause for the sense organs.
Yes.
Yes.
Tanmatras are the cause of the sense organs.
Yes. Got
So
it.
can I say what I understand now?
Please, please.
So we say ki what we are experiencing is actually the gunas of the object.
Yes.
And the gunas, they belong to the tanmatras.
Correct.
And with the tanmatra, which themselves are the cause of the indriyas.
Indriyas.
Okay, so sort of you can say ki sense objects in a way are cause of the indriyas.
And therefore, indriyabhya paramartha.
Okay.
Okay. What a long explanation for 1 quarter. Okay. Now,
But actually, Acharya, it's very important again as a reiteration of, that it is all seemingly real, but not really so.
yes,
It's a
all seemingly real.
reiteration. Yeah.
And Shankara, whenever he talks, he has at the back of his brain, Jagan Mithya, Brahma Satyam. So this is all in pursuance of that view.
Which is again only kind of resolved which is only resolved in the term mithya, not in the term not in any other term.
Not in any other manner.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Now, if you go further, because the Sukshma Panchabhutani are also the karanam for the mind, remember. Right? Antakarana also comes from where? From the sattvic aspect of the Sukshma Panchabhutani. Therefore, you have to put it here saying that the arthas, the sense objects, are the cause of the indriyas. Similarly, the arthas, Sukshma Panchabhutani, are the cause of the mind also. And therefore, here he is saying, Athebhya Paramanaha. Why? Because because what has created the mind is the same subtle objects, but in a subtler form. This is again one more very important, mind game. We are saying two things. We are saying that the sense organs in the term Sukshma Panchabhutani have created indriyas, and therefore the Sukshma Panchabhutani are superior to the indriyas. At the same time, you can extend the argument. The Sukshma Panchabhutani have also created the mind. What is the difference over here? The Antakaranam, the mind, consisting of your Jnanendriyas, have been created by the sattvic aspect of Panchamahabhutani, and the other indriyas, the karmendriyas, have been created by the rajasic aspect of the Panchamahabhutani. Therefore, here again, it's a very, very important derivation, corollary. The Panchamahabhutani, Panchamaha-Sukshma-Bhutani, which have created the mind, has to be more subtle than the Panchamahabhutani, which has created the indriyas. Does it make sense?
No, I don't understand Acharya at all. Because the collective sattvic aspect of Panchabhut, Sukshma Panchabhutani, that's what creates the mind.
Yes.
Individual
Antakaranam.
creates, Antakaranam. Individual creates the objects, as we are saying.
Yes.
So why? How can that be superior to?
Because this superiority will be in three ways. One is the sattvic aspect is more sukshma, more intangible.
Okay.
Then it is mahantascha. That is what the adjective that Shankara uses. It is more pervading. And secondly, pratyek atma bhutascha. It is closer to the inner self. The mind is closer to the atma than the indriyas. Is it not? In terms of Tattva also.
Mhm.
And therefore, the mind is superior to the indriyas. Even though they are both, we say for both of them, the Pancha Mahabhutani are the cause. We say that the sense objects are superior to the indriyas, but the mind is superior to that also. It's a very complex understanding, right? And that is why Krishna took the easier route. Indriyani paranyahu, indriyabhya parampana. He did not go through the complication of introducing the vishaya, the artha. So let me give you an example to try to make it easier. This Pancha Mahabhutani, the Sukshma Pancha Mahabhutani, they create the mind. The mind is capable of what? Of analyzing pros and cons. So in Tattva we said Sankalpa Vikalpa. The mind is capable of analyzing pros and cons of a matter. While the function of the Indriyas is what?
To perceive.
To reveal the sense object. Now Indriyas will report that there is ice cream in my fridge. The mind will do the Sankalpa Vikalpa and tell me before the class, perhaps it is not wise to eat the ice cream. Who is superior?
Mind.
That is what is being said. Born from the same five elements, the nature of the Antakaranam functions in a superior manner because basically every individual Indriya reports to the Antakaranam only. It is the Antakaranam which collates all the information and then decides that this is a strawberry ice cream, this is a mobile phone, this is a cup of coffee. It also it weighs the pros and cons and decides whether I should accept it or not. Therefore, the mind is superior. I want you guys to say yes, we have understood. If you're all understood, we can still discuss. Very important point.
Mind. Confusing.
Acharya, so mind here in the sense the lower mind or buddhi?
No, we are not talking about mind is Antakaranam. Use the technical word in Tattva. Antakaranam. The inner instrument. That Antakaranam consists of various functions.
Acharya, but then up ahead it also says intellect is superior to mind. So I think.
Yes.
That is
So
obvious.
here we are
So,
talking about the.
So we are using. We are
No,
coming there.
I think everyone has gotten a little confused only because of the first part of this discussion, which was very, very involved.
It's a very involved discussion, but it's
Yeah.
important to
But
understand.
I think if we, do away with all the confusing and many, many words, it's actually quite simple in the sense that which is what you explained.
Yeah.
Which is that finally even the senses finally do have a cause, and therefore that particular cause is greater than
The Karanam is always greater than the Karya.
Yeah.
Always subtler than the Karya.
And then going from there in order of superiority because of the processes that are involved.
There's a mind and there's the intellect.
Yeah. So it's pretty simple. I think, just kind of do away with the with the other acrobatics. Verbal acrobatics.
But if somebody asked you, you explained to somebody and somebody just quoted the verse from Bhagavad Gita and without Shankara's explanation, you would be stuck.
Yes, that is completely true.
So that is why it's important to understand Shankara.
Acharya,
Yeah.
I think I got it. But I had this question when we were doing Tattva Bodha also. How are we supposed to use this information? Why are we learning this?
You are learning all about Anatma. Because essentially it is Anatma alone, which is the ladder for Atma. You can't reach the Atma without the Anatma. At the same time, the last bit, it is a bit of a leap because there's no connecting bridge between Anatma and Atma. You can't walk across. And therefore, once you have done thoroughly familiar with Anatma and you're thoroughly familiar with Atma, then you just take the decision that, okay, I'm Atma, and that is crossing the bridge. That is leaping over that gap.
It's kind of like understanding how a mobile phone or your car or your computer or anything works, and then knowing how it works, making better utilization.
Making better use of it.
So, what I understand, ki mind is subtler, superior to the
Indriyas.
sense objects.
And sense
Now
objects,
we are
of
talking
course.
of, yeah,
Both.
because we said sense objects are superior to indriyas.
Yes.
So,
That the only difference is in that first quarter. Otherwise, the verse is the same. Gita verse and here meaning is the same.
So why? Because despite the indriya being made of the same sattvic part of the Pancha Bhuta, because it is capable of analyzing
higher functions. Higher
function. Okay.
Yeah. It is like a car has the capacity to reveal to you what is in front of you and behind you by using certain instruments. Another car doesn't have. Only the function. Okay. So now where are we? This Jivatma, to use Pandana's question, the Jivatma's journey is where to reach the Atma, right? And the journey is through Karma Marga only, and later on Upasana Marga, and later on Jnana Marga. So there is, if for example, he has two destinations. The Jivatma can choose to have worldly pleasures. So then his destination is Anatma, for which the journey is only karma, not karma yoga, just karma. And that journey is an outward journey, away from himself. Or he can choose to reach Atma, and then it's an inward journey. So this particular mantra is talking about this inward journey. And the journey is from where? From the gross to the subtle, and from the subtle to the more subtle. Nirgun Brahman is a very abstract principle. Whether intellect is Anatma, the gross world. And therefore the gross intellect cannot appreciate the abstract Brahman for a start. And therefore the process of refinement of that gross intellect is a must. That intellect has to be made more and more sensitive. And in many of the Upanishads, they prescribe a method for this, an upasana for this, which is called Pancha Bhuta Dhyanam. You are meditating upon the Pancha Bhutas. So Chandogya, for example, Chandogya Upanishad, it starts with meditation on Prithvi. And slowly moving from there, from Prithvi to Jala, that is water, from water to Agni, fire, from Agni to Vayu, and from Vayu to Akasha. So this journey is in terms of refining your intellect. And we also call it, in ATTC terms, it's called the Arundhati Darshana Nyaya. What is Arundhati Darshana Nyaya?
The star, Arundhati star, in the sky, where you don't directly view it, but you expect it through the position of the other star.
Which is the other star?
Vashishta.
Vashishta. Vashishta, right? Vashishta. Yeah.
Yes. So the Nyaya is that you connect it to the position of the other star.
Yeah. So Arundhati is the dimmer star. It is less visible. And Vashishta is the brighter star. So for those who are familiar with the Puranas, Arundhati was sage Vashishta's wife. Okay, so Arundhati in modern terminology, Arundhati is a binary star, which means there is Arundhati and there is Vashishta. Normally, when you say binary star, the star which is less bright, it revolves around it is an orbit around the star which is brighter. So normally it would be Arundhati being the satellite of Vashishta. But strangely enough, this binary system is two-way. They revolve around each other. But anyway, that's another story. So Vashishta is a brighter star. And therefore, to see Arundhati, first you have to locate Vashishta. And then once you locate Vashishta, you look for the star revolving, the dimmer one, and that is Arundhati. So that method of moving from the brighter to the dimmer, from the gross to the subtle, that is called Arundhati Darshana Nyaya. It has got another name also, Shakha Chandra Nyaya. What is Shakha Chandra Nyaya? There is a branch of a tree which you can see, and in line with the branch, you will find a dim moon over there. So you first tell the person, look at the branch, then look slightly away, and you will see the moon. So that is Shakha Chandra Nyaya. This method is used in what we call Pancha Kosha Viveka. So we have studied Pancha Kosha in Tattvabodha as a prakriya, as a methodology. But these are essentially meditative methods. So you have to use the technique of neti, not this, not this. Starting from Annamaya Kosha, you have to move inwards, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and so on. Right? We will study this in more detail when we study either Taittiriya Upanishad or Panchadashi. Both these texts have it in great detail. But in these mantras, the Panchakosha, Viveka is what we talked about. So from Annamaya to Pranamaya to Manomaya to Vijnanamaya. And when you reach Vijnanamaya, what do? You understand the methodology, right? You first meditate saying that I am Annamaya Kosha. Atma is Annamaya Kosha. That is the first step of the meditation. Panchakosha Viveka meditation is first you take Annamaya Kosha and you say I am Annamaya Kosha. Then you say but. That's the big thing, the but. But this Annamaya Kosha has got a beginning and it's got an end. It is subject to the 6 changes, Shadvikara. And then you ask yourself, how can I then be the Annamaya Kosha? Because of what?
I am Brahman. I am always.
Because I am Atma. Atma cannot be subject to Shadvikara.
Yeah.
And therefore you discard the Annamaya Kosha and you say, okay, I am not Annamaya Kosha. Now, when you discard Annamaya Kosha, you have classified Annamaya Kosha as what? As Anatma, right? So then, because you have classified Annamaya Kosha as Anatma, now we have moved towards Pranamaya Kosha. Then you say, I am Pranamaya Kosha, Annamaya Kosha is Anatma. And then again you do some meditation, then you realize that, okay, Pranamaya Kosha also is continuously changing. And what changes cannot be I, the Atma. Therefore, you discard Pranamaya Kosha also. Similarly, Manomaya Kosha also. Similarly, Vijnanamaya Kosha also. Once you have discarded Vijnanamaya Kosha, what is there?
Anandamaya.
Yeah, but in Vijnanamaya, there will be thoughts. And if you are discarding Vijnanamaya, what should be there? There should be only blankness.
Nothing.
So this nothingness, or this nothingness is not the word, this blankness is essentially the potential form of Vijnanamaya Kosha and all the other koshas. So in that blank state of Anandamaya Kosha, you have to appreciate that all the other koshas are present in a potential state. And now you ask yourself, if this is Anandamaya Kosha, how come that I am aware of it? What is the principle behind my being aware of this Anandamaya Kosha. Because mind is resolved, right? You should not be aware of anything. But if you know that you are aware of the blankness, then the answer is the consciousness principle which reveals the absence of thoughts, which is the Annamaya Kosha, which is Annamaya Kosha, that is the Atma. So this is basically Pancha Kosha Viveka in short, okay? And so he says, Indriyabhyaha, may you be aware of the sense organs. First, focus on the sense organs. So you can, this verse is to be used as Pancha Kosha Viveka only. Indriyabhyaha, first focus on the sense organs. Consider yourself the sense organs. Then, Parahi Arthaha. I have to discard this and say the sense objects which have entered my mind, they are superior to the sense organ. And then, Arthebhyascha Paramanaha, subtler than the thought, subtler than the vritti, which reveals the sense objects, is the mind, which is all the vrittis are in the mind. You come to that, Manomaya Kosha, and then you say Manasastu Para Buddhi. The Vijnanamaya Kosha is subtler than the mind because Vijnanamaya Kosha is capable of higher functions, analysis, while the mind is capable only of emotions. How do we know that intellect is powerful? Because we work so much for ideas only. Your freedom struggle is based on the idea of a separate state. So everything is based on ideas only. Therefore, the intellect is all powerful. Then, Buddhiratmaha Mahan Paraha. So Mahan here is Mahat. Mahat is Hiranyagarbha, Samashti intellect, the universal intellect, aggregation of all intellects. That Samashti, what is it called? Hiranyagarbha. In Tattva we saw it as Hiranyagarbha, a total intellect that is superior to the individual mind. So Hiranyagarbha is equal to Samashti Vijnanamaya, Samashti Manomaya, Samashti Pranamaya. Whenever I say Hiranyagarbha, it is the totality of Samashti Vijnanamaya, Samashti Manomaya, and Samashti Pranamaya. Obviously, Samashti Annamaya is not there. Why? Why Samashti Annamaya is not included in Hiranyagarbha?
That's gross.
It's
Hiranyagarbha is
it's
Sukshma.
What is the name?
This is all.
Sorry.
What is
Samashti Sukshma Sharira.
Virat.
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 Because Virat is separate, therefore Virat is Samashti Sthula Sharira. The totality of all individual bodies or all bodies is Virat. The physical body of the Lord is Virat, chapter 11. But Hiranyagarbha is a subtle body, and therefore Samashti Vijnanamaya plus Manomaya plus Pranamaya. And then Manasastu Para Buddhi, within the Hiranyagarbha, the Vijnanamaya superior to Manomaya, superior to Pranamaya. Why so? Because intellect can direct the mind, it can control the mind, and therefore we say that Manasastu Para Buddhi. And this is the example of the chariot, where the charioteer is the mind. Okay. So what is the function of the mind? Samshaya Atmakam. What is function of the intellect? What is the function? Nishchaya Atmakam. Okay, so all this, if you remember, you will understand this much better. And therefore, when the intellect comes, the mind thinks of various options. Sankalpa, Vikalpa, Samshaya Atmakam, that is all the mind. But when the intellect comes in with Nishchaya Atmakam, then a decision is taken, and therefore intellect is superior to the mind. A decision takes away all doubts. That's why he says Buddhiratma Mahan Paraha. So Mahan Atma here is Hiranyagarbha, also called Samashti Vijnanamaya. I hope this much is clear. Any questions?
Raviji.
Yes, please go ahead.
So every time we talk about Hiranyagarbha, we also refer that is Brahmaji, Lord Brahmaji.
Yes.
But But the stula of the Virat,
Yes. Stula is Virat.
Virat is also the Lord, but how can we make
It is a physical body of the Lord. The universe. Virat means the universe.
okay.
We call it Vishwarupa Ishvara.
Vishwarupa Ishvara?
The Lord whose body is in the form of the universe. So the universe itself is Virat.
Okay.
The subtle body is Hiranyagarbha. The causal body is
Maya.
Antaryam.
Antaryami. Should never forget these basic lessons from Tattva. Antaryami is superior to Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha is superior to Virat. Antaryami is Maya, remember. Antaryami is Maya.
Thank you.
Why is Antaryami superior to Hiranyagarbha?
Because it's up there, closer to the...
A more practical reason? Anybody? That's because real Mananam, okay, this question. Why is the universal causal body said to be superior to the universal subtle body?
Because it is the karanam for the subtle body.
That's the Karan.
That is one. But remember that the Antaryami does not perish during Pralaya. Why? Hiranyagarbha dies during Mahapralaya. But Antaryami does not. That is why Antaryami's other name is what? What are the two things which survive Pralaya?
Atma and Maya.
Atma and Maya, Brahman and Maya. And therefore Antaryami's other name is Maya. And if you look at it, every Hiranyagarbha is born from Antaryami alone. Therefore Hiranyagarbha is this particular creation, but Antaryami has all potential and past creations in itself. And therefore Antaryami is superior to Hiranyagarbha.
Okay, that's why the Puranic depiction of Brahmaji is always from the navel of Vishnu.
From the navel of Vishnu. Hiranyagarbha is born and he dies. Antaryami is the potential, the seed of Hiranyagarbha, all the possible Hiranyagarbhas. Very good question. Okay. Anybody else? Was it too much today's,
I have another question. Is it
yeah,
okay?
June, of course.
So regarding the first discussion of today's class, we were making the example of the rose. So the rose, we can, with the Karamendriyas, we touch it and then we sense it through the Jnanendriyas. We can sense
you can see the color, you can smell the rose, almost things, yeah.
Yes, we can touch the textures, but all we're sensing is just the gunas of the rose, not the stula shariram itself.
Not gunas of the rose, gunas of the Pancha Mahabhutani, which have become the rose after Panchikaranam. Remember, Tattva talks about gunas for subtle elements. It doesn't talk about gunas for gross elements. What you see as the smell in the earth is the smell associated with the subtle Prithvi manifested in the gross Prithvi. Because your ears are, your nose is gross. It cannot smell the subtle aspect of it. And therefore you are smelling the gross aspect post Panchikaram. That is the important part of this first explanation of Shankaracharya's, which is very important to remember that anything that I smell, I am smelling through my grossified body, right? The tamasic aspect of my body has been created, but I am smelling the gross aspect. But that gross aspect does not contain a guna at all. And therefore it is a manifestation of the subtle guna, which is now being expressed through the gross part of it, the gross element.
You refer to the karyam.
Karyam is the product.
The karya.
Karyam is the product. Karanam is the cause.
Yes. So
the Karanam is subtle body, a subtle Pancha Mahabhutani. Karyam is the gross post Panchikaranam Mahabhutani. Shankaracharya, I tell you, he complicates matters.
Om Raviji,
yes,
can I just say a few words?
Yeah.
I think Natarajji started with it, but we lost him somewhere. In the medical aspect, if I look at this, the eyes only see the nama, rupa, color, everything. It is when it is processed by the brain, which is the subtle aspect. The gross aspect of the rose is visualized by the indriya, which is the eye. It is only when it is finally processed in the brain that we understand that this is a rose.
Yes, agreed.
So that's just a small example I've given you from the medical aspect of what the brain processes, which is very subtle.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
because if you were, the proof for that statement is if you saw an object which you had never seen earlier, you have no label to give to it because your brain is not capable of processing, right? But here we are going one step further. We are saying that the form which you see, if you are seeing a rose and you see the form of the rose, Shankara is saying that the eyes are not seeing the form at all. Medical technology says that your eyes are seeing the form. Shankara says that form which you are seeing, it's not belonging to the sthula rose. It is belonging to the 5 elements in the subtle form. That's the difference. That is the difference we're trying to get at.
Yes, I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Natarajji, is that okay with you? Because you started with this and we lost you somewhere in the middle.
No, I was listening to you and we went on. Yeah, it's obviously it's a definite shift from the scientific aspect, which says it has to be because science is materialistic.
Yes.
So it's going to be almost impossible to reconcile this.
Correct. But
scientifically,
the aspect of seeing the form, science is absolutely clear on that. You are seeing only the form, and it's your brain which decides that is a rose.
Right.
So here we are going one step further and saying you are not seeing the form of the gross elements. You are actually seeing the form, which is the guna of the subtle element, which constitute that form.
Yeah. Basically, any sensation is the subtle aspect of the guna.
That's what's being conveyed here.
Right. So we don't really even have an idea what the gross element is. Actually.
No, you can never really see the world. Everything is a thought in your mind. All these these discussions will come in great detail in the Mandukya Upanishad and Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where Shankara proves conclusively that there is no world at all. There are only thoughts in your mind.
Right. Looks like we're going there.
Yeah, we are going there.
Thank you.
Okay, so with this we'll stop. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Om Tat Sat. Thank you, Acharya.